Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. This show focuses on the workplace and the workforce trends that are shaping the workplaces and the workforce around us. And there's no doubt that since March, the trends that have been shaping everything are COVID-related. And goodness knows, so many of us have had enough of this topic. Nevertheless, it's the topic on the forefront of everyone's mouths today. I was on a Zoom call earlier today with a potential client in Phoenix, and the first thing, of course, and I kind of tested the water. What are we going to talk about in this common ground building part of the call? And of course, we immediately got into the pandemic and the quarantine and stuff like that. It's the topic of the day. So today's show is going to continue to focus on the reactions of businesses in that time of the pandemic, what they've done well, what they've done poorly, and I'll have a guest that I'll introduce here shortly or either after the break. I do want to begin today's show by saying this is the final Tuesday-Thursday show of the What's Working Special Edition. We began these in early March as soon as things changed rapidly. I called this station and said, hey, I think I can help. I've got contacts. I got people that I think I can put on the radio and interview them and talk to them about how to get through this tumultuous time. And to the credit of the station, they said, yeah, come on. And it was within a couple of days that I was in here and began this process. Today marks the final of the special editions, the Tuesday-Thursday show. Our regular Wednesday show will remain in place. I refer to it as the deep dive, where we get to know our guests a little bit and talk to them about the evolution of their business. But the Tuesday-Thursday show, the reaction, the What's Working with Cam Marston reaction to COVID is going to draw to a close for a couple of reasons. Number one, finding people that I can talk about or can talk to about salient topics immediately reactive of the COVID crisis is becoming harder. Not because they're not out there, but because people have suddenly gotten busy, very, very busy. People are no longer licking their wounds, their reactions. They're reacting. And second, my business is beginning to pick up in its old traditional way as well. After a week's vacation this upcoming week, I get back and begin a series of webinars, thank the Lord, for a client out in California. It's time to put this thing to bed, to reflect on it, put it to bed, and move along. And one of the things I want to ask you on this show is to call in. We've never really opened the phone lines. The number is 343-0106, and I'd like to know your thoughts about yourself, what you've learned about people, what you've learned about business, what you've learned about your team, etc., as a result of the last 4 months. What are the lessons gained from you, and what will you take forward? As we get ready, we're going to come to break here in a little bit. We'll get our guest on the line. He's got a great show to tell, a story for us. I want to bring your attention to last night's show, if you didn't hear it, 6 p.m. yesterday evening, barn-dominiums. Barn-dominiums is a structure. They're becoming much more popular. If you don't know what it is, go to what'sworkingcam.com and take a listen to last night's show. Speaking of trends shaping the landscape, barn-dominiums are out there. I was late to this game. I've said that before. But if you want to know what these things are, and you'll know them when you see them once you hear this show, check out last night's show on barn-dominiums. And I'm, again, very curious about yourself, what you think, what you've learned about yourself through this process, what you've learned about business, people, colleagues, etc. When we come back, we're going to have Abe Harper. Abe is the president of Harper Technologies. And when you get 2 emails over a handful of days from 2 different people saying, hey, you need to meet this guy and he needs to be on the show, you begin to think, well, maybe this is something I should pay attention to. And that's exactly what happened. Abe is waiting on hold. We'll get him back on the line in a moment, or after the break, we'll get him back and talk to him a little bit about his business in the IT business, what it is that he did, how he reacted, how his customers reacted, and lessons he's learned about the process of during the COVID times. Great storyteller with great stories to tell. You can't beat that combination. We'll be back after this break with Abe Harper. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions. Listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. What's Working is brought to you by Regions here on our final edition of the Tuesday-Thursday show. On the line with me is today's guest, Abe Harper. Abe is the president of Harper Technologies. They're an IT services company here in the Mobile area. He and I spoke on Tuesday talking a little bit about what we discuss on the show today, and he's got an incredible story of survival, I guess, and perhaps even thriving. Abe, thank you so much for your willingness to spend some time today. Welcome to the show.
Hey. Thanks, Cam. Thank you guys for having me on today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I know you're kind of in an awkward situation right now. If you need to change something or just be very candid with us of what's going on, you just say the word and we'll flex as we need to. But,
yeah,
you know, the work from home environment that immediately landed on our shoulders in the as the COVID thing hit, I can't help but think it must have just driven a huge surge in the IT business, and particularly your business. Why don't you tell me the story of how things fell into your lap, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so, you know, IT is an integral component of much of what happens. And, yeah, I'm in a little awkward position. So if you guys start getting any background noise, let me know. I'm actually having to shelter for a quiet place right now. But we're actually getting a set of negative tests, hopefully, from my home because we had a positive test last week, or 2 weeks ago now. So it's, coronavirus has changed the way we do things a little bit. But, you know, it's an interesting, unique scenario that in the IT world, it really accelerated a lot of what people had deferred, and that being the inevitable upgrades and the remote access systems that are necessary to create the environment of opportunity for their employees to be able to be relevant and still work from home. We thought that we were going to have kind of a slow pace and things to take a hiatus, if you will, when everything started ramping up. And it was literally the opposite for that. The bell curve went the entire opposite direction for us.
So you had thought it would be a trickle of business. You were thinking, how do we slow down appropriately? Instead, you guys had to ramp up remarkably fast. And it's due to everybody moving from a work-from-home environment. Is that right?
That's correct. We thought that we were going to have a pace where things would actually, a lot of our clients are schools and municipalities and different organizations. So the thought process for us was, okay, they're going to slow down. They're going to close down, so we're not going to have a whole lot to do. What we didn't see is the clients that were essential services, the light government sector clients and the clients that had no choice but to continue functioning. So when they ramped up, let me back up. When they had to have people working from home, the environment changed dramatically, because now they have to have systems in place to allow virtual access. But then the other side of that is when they, when the schools shut down, a lot of the mandate was now, let's accelerate our upgrade processes. Let's get things done. Let's get ahead of the curve, as opposed to waiting on the back end of this, and then we still have to do upgrades. We still have to do mandatory replacements and repairs. So, there's kind of it was interesting. We predicted it wrong, but the model went exactly the way that, if you look at it logically now, is the way it should have gone.
Yes, that's what hindsight does, doesn't it? Makes us all brilliant in hindsight. Of course that's what happened. Of course that's what happened. We can see it all very clearly now. I'm curious, has the pace continued today?
It has. We have seen zero slowdown, and to the effect that I think there's been a light shine on much of what is required for IT companies across the board, and the number of people that have come about and said, "Hey, we've added clients during this phase." Quite a few clients, actually, because the relationship may have not been pre-existing with the IT company they could trust, or maybe the relationship did exist and they found ways that they would prefer to move forward outside of that relationship. But yeah, we haven't seen a slowdown yet.
You know, something you've mentioned when you and I spoke earlier in the week, and you've said it again on the show today, is IT companies you can trust. And it makes me wonder if there's not a lot of smoke and mirrors out there in your business, because you emphasize the trust a couple of different times. Is that something you can comment on?
It is. IT is probably the closest thing to banking that a lot of companies will see. It's not a, how do I say this? It's a requirement. it's not just an efficiency option anymore. It's what you need in order for your company to thrive and to grow. In the past, historically, it's been kind of an optional thing, and over time, it's really kind of gathered its wits, if you will, and grown into a component that is woven through every fabric of a business's daily operation. So, the baseline is now people have no choice but to kind of lean into it. It's just like going to a bank. You have to have that relationship, and if you're a business owner or a business operator, you know what the value of a banking relationship is. There's no two ways about it. That's woven through everything you do, because everything you do is driven by revenue. So the trust relationship that has to exist between an IT business and a client is really unparalleled. I mean, you got to remember that at your darkest hour, if everything is going downhill, that this is somebody that's in your corner, that's willing to go the extra mile to get things done, but also be abundantly transparent and candid with you about the do's and don'ts of what you would like to do in your model. So there's a lot of value, I think, in that relationship being predicated on implicit trust and, the ability and availability of a conversational piece to have interaction with your client without having to question whether or not you're in their corner.
So one of the things that you'd mentioned is you guys were ramping up. Suddenly you had thought you would be slowing down. Instead, you were ramping up. I'm wondering if you've been able to keep the people you need during this time to serve your clients as well as they are looking for.
So we've only had 2 turnovers per se. We have added some new contract employees as well as a couple of new full-time, and we're adding some more actively as we speak. It's I will say this, for that segment of the skilled market, it's a tough search to find people. It's already tough, right? I mean, workforce has been long been known to be when unemployment was low, it was a problem because there was a very limited resource pool to pull from. And now, even with the increased unemployment numbers due to the increased unemployment payouts, it's a little harder to find good people that are not either freelancing or standing on their own or tethered into a company that's just kind of got them on a furlough or hiatus. So, and then you compound that with trying to match culture with, a reasonable price point, because that does factor into it, because you're basically, you're hiring your resource to resell to your client, so to speak.
Yeah. I'm curious, do you guys have a filter for how you find these people? This has been a question from the What's Working franchise, I guess, now for 3 years, is how do you find the people that match the culture that you're trying to convey to your customers? You guys have such a reputation in the community here. What is your filter for finding those people?
You ready for my secret sauce?
Yes, my friend, I am.
The short answer to that is hire for culture, and then train them for skill set.
Yeah, that's not
hire
the first time we've heard that, Abe.
Train for aptitude.
Yeah.
That really is it, and there's always a concession, right? If you're a boater, or if you're a truck person, or if you're a hunter, you're looking at boats, trucks, or guns. You got to remember, no matter which one you buy, there's always something you're going to concede. If you're buying a handgun, you lose the availability of the firepower of a rifle. If you're buying a 1500, you lose the option of pulling a fifth wheel like you would with a 3/4 ton. If you're buying a bay boat, you lose the option of going offshore snapper fishing on rough days out in the, so there's always a concession. Same thing when you're looking for human resources. You're finding the person that gets as close to that model of what you do on the day-to-day as possible, and then you're training them for everything else in the gap.
How are you getting the word out these days that you're looking? There's a part of me that says, gosh, you've got an opportunity here, Abe. You got a lot of customers that need your help. You could quickly pick up a bunch of new business, but the sense that I get in speaking to you is that the quality of the individual, the quality of the relationship, and to use the word you've used already, trust being so key. How do you manage that?
You remember those lost cat posters that used to be everywhere on signposts way back when people would lose their cat? That's how we get the word. No, we do a hybrid mixture of a few things. I'm mentoring some different channels. We work with so obviously we talk to those channels very directly. But then above and beyond that, we have relationships with some recruiting organizations that will send us leads. We really try to do it through organic relationships that we already have from people that know people that may be in or near our field. And then, of course, there's Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Zillow, all those things. But not Zillow, I'm thinking about property here. ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, and Monster.
Lots of people are using those. They remain still very popular. I don't hear a whole lot of good feedback about their efficacy. Do you have a different story to tell?
We have some success and we have some misses there. I think the successes are usually a result of us being very narrow focused in who we're looking for and where we're looking. We have found some really good employees there.
Yeah.
But to that point, it's a mass engine. So what happens is when you put a listing up, you have to filter through a lot of non-alignment. You have to filter through a lot of mismatch just to make sure that you get to the candidate that closely aligns with your mission. And just from being very transparent here, sometimes that is the reason we defect to talking to people that we know, right, or kind of researching channels that we've got a implicit trust with already, because we quite frankly sometimes just don't have the time to go through that method.
Yeah. If your experience in the pandemic environment, this big ramp up that you went through, can't only be unique to you, and I can't help but wonder if at some point there wasn't a equipment shortage and that you had clients that needed this piece of equipment to get their office up to running to this speed or this capability, and you just had to look at them and say, you know what? Everybody's already bought it. We just simply don't have any. I remember going to Best Buy early on during the pandemic, and they had no more computer monitors. They said, oh, gosh, the work from home environment, they're gone, and we don't know when we're going to get them again. Same with web cameras. They're gone, and we don't know when we're going to get them again. It must have been hard to look at clients, or did you look at your clients and say, can't help you just simply because we can't get our hand on any equipment?
So we've got a lot of different distribution channel and partnerships that range everything from East Coast, West Coast, some out of Canada, some out of Asia, and some out of Europe. So we've got far-reaching network of asset delivery and product provision. What I found, we had, like you highlighted, laptops, monitors, web cameras, Chromebooks especially are a big one because the school systems just drain those. And, the resource channels were already stressed because there was a refresh cycle in place. Microsoft had mandated that, I forget the exact date, but it was like January something, that Windows 7 went end of life. And our team was already in the process of replacing all Windows 7 units that we had for clients. But guess what? It wasn't just us. That was a worldwide effect. Microsoft had mandated that for everyone. So what we saw happen was Intel, the processor manufacturer, backed up because they ran out of processors. This is pre-pandemic in producing the Windows 10 machines. Windows 7 machines were quickly becoming end of life. People were buying and trying to move forward with new. And then, lo and behold, the pandemic happened. We've got this massive outbreak, and everybody is scrapping and fighting to get every single portable device they can, every single broadcast device they can, every single web streaming solution that they can possibly get, because it's relevant to being able to sustain their business. There was a situation where we ordered a group of Chromebooks for a client, and the order was placed in March, and we weren't able to fulfill it until about 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, March until 4 weeks ago. Amazing. And it's not a challenge unique to yours. It's Part of the interesting story that one of these days we'll look back on and smile and say, don't you remember these days? And Abe, when we come back, I want to talk to you about any sort of I told you so moments when you were able to, and I can tell from your personality, you would never say this. But when you looked at your clients and said, you know what? I told you so. I told you back in February, maybe you should have given this some thought. We'll be back after this break. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, brought to you by Regions. Abe Harper, President, Harper Technologies. Abe Harper is the president of Harper Technologies. He's on the line with me on our final edition of the What's Working Tuesday, Thursday special show. Abe, we were talking prior to the break about some of the I told you so moments, particularly in your business where you can look at a client and say, you know, I told you might should have upgraded or phased that piece of technology out or upgraded to this newer, faster stuff. And now may have been the time for you to look at them and say, you know what, I told you so. Were there any moments like that as you were going through this COVID event over the past 4 months?
You know, we try not to use those 4 words. So the reality is, yeah, you know, there's been a lot of opportunities that could have been the conversation. Our narrative is very different, obviously, just based on our company culture. You know, one of the things that we've been really blessed with over our company lifespan, 18 years this year, is that we've been afforded the opportunity to really narrow focus the clients that we service based on building organic relationships. And the ones that don't work out, it's not like we have to have an angry parting of ways or some type of a big knockdown drag out, but we can have a very transparent conversation of, hey, this isn't the best of interest, or, you know, we don't feel that we're meeting your needs as we could be. So what we'll do a lot of times is have to have that conversation and help them find a relationship that's a closer match. So by virtue of all of that, we have a lot of clients that we do business with that we just love to talk to and have interaction with, and they actually get treated kind of like family. The backside of that, to answer your question, is yes, we have some clients that will defer things because they know they can get away with it. They know that we'll be forgiving or we'll give a little grace on it. The caveat is in a situation like this, there were some conversations that were had that, hey, you guys really should probably consider upgrading before the end of the year on these processes or these projects. And when we had those conversations in the past, they didn't maybe adhere to it immediately. And then all of a sudden, during the pandemic, we get the phone call, hey, we really, really need remote access right now.
Yeah.
And, you know, the right now is a tough thing to do in a pandemic, right? It's tough enough to do on a day-to-day, but during a pandemic, it's even more difficult. So we had a handful of those conversations we had to have with, you know, we will definitely get this done for you. You probably should have done this a little sooner. We don't love you any less, but next time we make a recommendation, help us out a little bit.
Yeah.
Here's in advance. Right. So,
yeah,
that's
these
kind
recommendations
of the general direction that we've taken the conversation when we've had it.
The recommendations you make your clients are not happenstance. They're not out of the ether. They tend to have some meaning to them. Now, when you and I spoke, and this, Abe, I'll be honest with you, this has resonated with me since we ended our phone call earlier this week. And there's just some wisdom in this, and I'm going to ask you to kind of repeat some of the things because I think it's just brilliant. When you and I spoke earlier in the week, you said there are four conversations leading the headlines today and have been leading the headlines for months. And those four, the pandemic, racial injustice, the weather, always the weather, and the election. And unless you're talking about one of those four subject matters, it's hard to get anybody's attention right now. So your topic, your expertise, your business could certainly fall under the pandemic umbrella because you are reacting, people are reacting to the pandemic. But our conversation was, and where I'd like to go with this now, is that you're a mentor to other small businesses out there. I am a small business. There are people listening who are small businesses who are struggling to get the attention of clients today because their message does not fall under one of those 4 umbrellas. Give us a sense of this argument again. Tell me, introduce the listeners to this, and perhaps some insights on how to get your message heard now, particularly small businesses who really need the business.
Yeah, so in kind of some of those mentorship channels, the conversation early on in the pandemic was, from one of the companies that I mentors, I just feel like I'm not being seen. I feel like I can't get heard. I feel like no matter what I do, people don't know who I am, and that was where that narrative, I kind of shared. Obviously, I had to lighten the moment because this is a business owner in distress. And the job is to mentor and hopefully help guide them into unearthing their internal potential without me having to, necessarily get down in the weeds and do it for them. And the narrative was, right now is not the time to think about the shoulda, woulda, couldas of marketing or impressioning or advertising. You can start now, but you can't consider it a loss because you didn't do anything in advance of this. And that was what I told them. I said, right now, unless you're part of the pandemic, you're talking about the election, the weather is a factor, or you're discussing racial injustice, people really aren't hearing you because there's so much other conversation around those topics happening on social media, on print media, on radio media that we're getting, and video media we're getting involved with, that this isn't the time to sit and kind of have a sob party for yourself for. So the thing I told them, I said, there's 2 things that happen during times of crisis. Needs are met and companies fold. And you look at the BP oil spill, you look at the housing crisis in 2008. There's always a need that arises out of it. So I've encouraged as many of the companies as I mentor, what is it that you can do right now? And this is no different than the narrative that we've heard in the general public, but what can you do right now to provide a value to the clients that you do already service, to gain and build those relationships, to make those relationships go as deep as you can possibly get them, and then get them to refer you to others. You've got to look at the tools that are sitting in front of you instead of the missed opportunities that you think that you overlooked somewhere.
So you said needs are met or businesses are fold. Are you telling, if you were mentoring this small business again, are you telling them you've got to find a way to make your needs match one of those 4 dominant narratives right now?
Not necessarily one of those 4, but that you need to hear what your clients are asking for. Prime example, post-Hurricane Katrina, we were a 3-year-old company. Our focus then was break-fix IT services. It breaks, we fix it. There was no contracts, there were no obligations. You pick up the phone, you call us, we come and service. Problem is after Hurricane Katrina, for a period of 2 weeks, the people that had power were trying to figure out what they still had. The people that didn't have power didn't need IT services. Right? So we basically were out of business after Hurricane Katrina if we just sat there on our hands. What we did is we started finding ways to partner with insurance companies to ask questions about, hey, what are the people that had a loss during the storm? From an IT perspective, what are they going to need from a professional opinion or an expert services level to get back up to business? So we became a consultancy during that period, because we had a client that called us and said, hey, I'm trying to fill out my paperwork for my insurance stuff. Yes, I want to buy new computers. Yes, I need to get everything set up, but we're weeks out from that. I don't understand this paperwork. So we got in and we learned what it was that they were lacking in terms of the narrative on the paperwork and how we could help consult them through it. And then it got to a point where we actually had insurance companies calling us saying, hey, you guys have oversight on these areas and what the price and the delivery perspective timeframes are. Can you sign an affidavit, and can you give us information on that? So it actually became a marketable consultancy service that we were advocating for the clients with the insurance agencies on behalf of.
So
Hurricane Katrina.
You had these clients lead you through this process. They essentially said, "This is the business that we need. This is the hurt that we're feeling, and maybe you can provide us some sort of the solution." But I know there are businesses out there, perhaps a more esoteric business, not something as critical as IT services, that they're saying, we can't find a need right now. We're not sure we have a need. Is your advice as a mentor to these businesses to say, all right, listen, shut it down. Shut it down for 6 months. Figure out how to mitigate your losses. Shut it down for 6 months, and in 6 months from now, things will be different and you can come back. What would you say to that person?
I don't ever advocate for a business owner shutting their business down. It's kind of like telling a parent that's going through a tough patch with a teenager to to get another kid, because it's your baby, right? You've spent time, energy, and invested in this. Now, if they arrive at that conclusion on their own, that, hey, this is just more than I want to take on, I don't want to do that, then I will support them if that is where their heart truly lands. My narrative usually to an entrepreneur or to a business owner that comes to me and says, hey, I can't find a cross-section anywhere, I always ask them, have you looked for your pivot? Have you looked for what it is that you're going to have to do that allows you to be relevant in some capacity, still, parallel to your segment? Because at the end of the day, even event planning services, okay, like that's the biggest impact right now that we can feasibly see, right? Because they're getting canceled, venues are shutting down. But when you look at it through a very near field perspective, event services businesses are a casualty of the pandemic. Is that a fair statement, you think?
Undoubtedly. You're looking at victim number 100 right here. All the events that I had on my calendar are gone till March of 2021. They've been delayed a year. So
think about it this way. If you're an event planner, if that's your primary livelihood, you're a wedding planner, if you're a large format venue planner, there's still a market for you. Does that sound crazy when I say that?
Yep.
Okay, so events haven't gone away. They've changed how they are executed. Now you've got digital events. You've got hybrid events. There's still a need for somebody to organize the agenda for a digital event and convey that to the technical team, the Daltons of the world that are out there at the event that are live streaming and coordinating the event so that the speakers and everyone are in a time space. There's still a need for someone that has an eye for the aesthetic of the event, to create the lighting and the environment and the element, because that event is still being held in a room, even though it's not a 500-person venue.
I hear you. So this is the pivot, and goodness knows this is the pivot that we've talked about, that we've heard about, et cetera. But I'm here to simply play devil's advocate. But in March you had, and I'll pick a number, let's just say 100 events. In July you've got 6. And now you've got 100 people competing for 6 events versus 100 people competing for 100 events. It's tough.
That's right. Well, and to look at it from the the not-for-profit world is also a casualty, if you will, in a lot of ways of the pandemic. Coronavirus has created an optic right now. I think Giving USA made a statement that said that some odd 50% of not-for-profits are expected to fail within 18 months based on the pandemic. That's a shocking number, especially for someone that serves on as many not-for-profit boards as I do. That's staggering. There's no, you can't conceptualize that.
Abe Harper is the president of Harper Technologies. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston, brought to you by Regions. We're going to be back after this break. Abe, I got some really, really good questions coming back after the break. We'll be right back. If you guys heard that last segment, but Abe Harper was dropping pearls of wisdom, quickened my own blood. Abe, good stuff, man. We're going to keep it going. We got a short segment here to wrap it up, and I'm going to ask you a couple of things. You still there?
I am. Hey, can I take 10 seconds and shout out to my family, because they're blowing up my text message group right now? Let me know they're listening.
Oh, absolutely. Good for them. That's good. That would mean that there are 10 people listening. That's awesome. Appreciate it. Now, listen. If you, knowing what you now know, and based on the wisdom that we've heard from your previous comments, if you could rebuild your business based on what you know today, what would you do differently?
Absolutely, positively nothing.
Oh, wow. There's a lot of confidence in that statement. I'm choosing the word confidence, but there's a different word for it. But there's a lot of confidence in that statement. You wouldn't do anything differently, huh?
I wouldn't, because the journey is what molded my character, and the opportunities are what created my humility.
Yeah.
And I try very, very hard to make sure I'm always cognizant and thankful for each and every customer interaction and each and every opportunity we get as a business to serve people, because that's what we are. We're a service business. There's a lot of scars, scrapes, and bruises that have come along the way that at the time were very painful. But as you know, as the president, and my brother Carl, the vice president, would probably say the same thing. That path, that journey to where we are right now, and the journey that we're on as we get to where we're going, you know, which whomever may know what that is as big a part of the process as anything.
Another question. You have your fingers in a lot of pots. You see a lot of different businesses due to the nature of what it is that you do. Are there businesses out there that you admire, that you look at and say, oh, that's just beautiful?
I do. Most of our clients, really. And you know, I'm kind of I don't want to over-romanticize the business world, but once you've operated a business, and once you've realized that you're not the big fish in the pond, there's always someone that you look at and you go, wow, the way that they operate their business, or that business model, is really unique. And you look up to them. And when I see that, especially where they're willing, I try and find them and ask them, hey, you know, here's some scenarios I'm working through. Would you consider being a mentor? Because they may have something that they can pour into me to help me get a little closer to my goal or my vision aligning like that.
So you are a mentor for other small businesses. You just mentioned that you ask others to be your mentors. How many people would you guess you have giving you advice?
Oh, my word. That I would call a mentor, probably 4 or 5 that are really close and proximate. People that have poured into me and shed light on things for me and helped me think through tough conversations. I couldn't count them if I wanted to. But I have a trusted group of people that I know I can pick up my phone at 2 a.m. and call them and say, hey, I am dealing with something. I need your 2 cents on it.
How important to you is it they're local? Are they local or are they national?
No, some are. There's probably 3 that are local, 2 are not. So, you know, I mean, that part is not as relevant just because they're available.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you, again, putting your thinking cap on, have you noticed opportunities for new technology? If you could invent something that you could now sell, and you knew it would sell a cajillion models of it, what would it be?
You know, these interesting little pole-mounted thermometer things that are selling for an arm and a leg that some businesses are springing to buy, and churches are springing to buy, and theme parks are springing to buy. You know, if there was a economical way to have invented that, you know, I think, and I don't understand all the ins and outs. I'm not a software guy. Anybody that knows me will tell you that. I'm very much a hardware and systems delivery guy. So when I look at them, I'm like, that's a really cool piece of hardware, but what's behind it? What's driving it? So there's always an opportunity in the circumstance. There's you know, in that case, there's 2, because there's an asset, but then there's also the data farming side of it. You know, if you've got something that's gathering analytics on how many people are infected or what their temperatures are on a day-to-day, especially if you're cataloging them daily or multiple times a day, you've got some really good information to into the medical field.
Yeah, I didn't consider that. Yeah. So last question, Abe. You've got, let's say, 100 teenagers in front of you, and they've asked you the question, Abe, what do we need to do to be successful in our life, our career? And I wouldn't have never asked you this question had I not heard some of your comments in the show already today. And you got less than a minute, Abe. What do we need to do to be successful, Abe? Your answer is?
Be honest to yourself. Be transparent with your surroundings. Be persistent with your goal. And be thankful for the opportunities.
No networking, no mentoring, no seeking advocates, no trying and failing and trying again, and no, what is it, the W.C. Fields never give up quote or anything like that.
That's all encompassed.
It's all
be
in
transparent there. Be transparent to your surroundings and be thankful for your opportunities.
Yeah.
Because, when you're mentorship is a transparency model, right? That's you openly sharing something with someone that's there for you. Not giving up is being thankful. That's encompassing each opportunity as an opportunity and not as a failure.
Abe Harper, the president of Harper Technologies. Abe, got to cut it short, my friend. Thank you. You'll hear from me. What's Working, Cam Marston, brought to you by Regions. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the treatment.